Keanu Reeves was sitting in Dottie's Diner off Route 66 in rural Oklahoma, savoring a rare moment of calm when a 5-year-old boy clutching a faded friendship bracelet approached and slipped a folded note under the table. Keanu's heart skipped a beat as he read the words scrawled in shaky pencil. "He's not my dad. Please help her." Instantly, his face paled, and he reached for his phone to dial 911. What happens next will tug at your heartstrings and leave you cheering for an unlikely hero. Before we dive deeper into this story, let us know where you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below. If you love tales of compassion and courage like this, hit that subscribe button, because tomorrow we've got another special story lined up just for you. It was April 5th, 2025, a golden Saturday afternoon in the American heartland. The sky stretched wide and endless, a flawless canvas of blue, interrupted only by a few wispy clouds, drifting lazily over fields that rolled out for 8 miles in every direction. The sun dipped low, casting a warm glow across the Oklahoma plains, its light glinting off the chrome of Keanu Reeves' motorcycle, parked just outside Dottie's Diner. Keanu, known across the world for his quiet charisma and unassuming kindness, had been riding cross-country for weeks, raising funds for kids' literacy programs, a cause he held close to his heart. After hours of weaving through highways and small towns, he'd decided to pull off Route 66 for a break, drawn by the neon sign promising home of the best cherry pie west of Tulsa. Dottie's Diner was a slice of Americana straight out of a postcard. Red vinyl booths lined the walls, worn but welcoming, their cushions creaking faintly under the weight of locals who'd made this spot a second home. A jukebox in the corner hummed Patsy Cline's Crazy, the notes weaving through the air alongside the clatter of plates and the low murmur of conversation. The scent of fresh coffee mingled with the sweet tang of cherry pie cooling on the counter, a comforting aroma that wrapped around you like a warm blanket. A waitress in a polka-dot apron, Ellie, as her name tag read, called out orders with a twang, while a farmer at the counter tipped his weathered cap to a passing trucker. It was the kind of place where time slowed down, where the hustle of the world outside faded into the background, and Keanu, for once, could just be. He'd walked in discreetly, his black leather jacket swapped for a simple gray hoodie, a pair of sunglasses perched on his head to shield his famous face from too many curious glances. After a morning spent shaking hands and reading stories to kids at a charity stop 50 miles back, he was tired, bone-deep tired, but a calm smile lingered on his lips. Keanu wasn't one for fancy restaurants or the glitz of Hollywood hotspots. No, he craved these simple moments, the kind where he could sit in a quiet corner, sip a coffee, and let the world spin on without him. He ordered a slice of pie at the counter, exchanging a nod with Ellie, who slid the plate over with a knowing grin, as if she'd pegged him as a regular despite it being his first time through. Settling into a booth by the window, Keanu turned off his phone, a rare act of disconnection for a man whose life was usually a whirlwind of scripts, shoots, and spotlight. The pie was warm, the crust flaky and golden, and he took a slow bite, letting the sweetness melt on his tongue as he gazed out at the horizon. The fields glowed amber in the fading light, reminding him of her, the sister he couldn't save, lost to a stranger's grip years ago on a road not unlike this one. For a moment, he felt at peace, a traveler on a path that stretched as far as his dreams once had. But the ache of that old wound lingered. Keanu, who'd faced his own storms, losses that carved quiet strength into his soul, found solace in these pauses, these fleeting chances to breathe. But that peace didn't last long. As he ate, something, or rather, someone, caught his eye. Across the diner, at a table near the jukebox, a boy sat staring at him. He couldn't have been more than 5, with messy brown hair spilling over his forehead and a faded green shirt that hung loose on his small frame. In his hands, he clutched a friendship bracelet, Its green and blue threads frayed, but held tight to his chest like a lifeline. His name, Keanu would later learn, was Ethan. The boy's eyes shone with a mix of curiosity and something heavier, apprehension, maybe even fear. Keanu offered a subtle smile, the kind that said, "I see you," without pushing, and returned to his pie. Kids stared sometimes. It came with the territory of being Keanu Reeves. But this felt different. Ethan kept watching, his gaze unwavering, as if he were gathering the courage for something big. At the same table sat a man, Victor, as Keanu would come to know him. Tall and wiry, Victor wore a cheap suit that didn't quite fit, his posture stiff, and his face etched with a coldness that clashed with the diner's warmth. He was on his phone, his voice low and clipped. "If the kid talks, we're done," Keanu caught him mutter. And every time Ethan shifted or fidgeted, Victor shot him a glance, sharp, disapproving, like the boy's very existence was an annoyance. The contrast was stark. Ethan, small and vulnerable, his fingers twisting the bracelet nervously. Victor, exuding control, his presence a shadow over the table. Keanu couldn't help but notice the tension, a quiet alarm bell ringing louder in the back of his mind. Minutes ticked by, and Ethan's restlessness grew. Keanu took another bite of pie, but his focus stayed on the boy. Then, the unexpected happened. With timid steps, Ethan slid down from his chair, the bracelet still pressed to his chest, and started walking toward Keanu. The diner seemed to hush, the jukebox's melody softening, as if the world held its breath. Ethan's eyes never left Keanu, wide and searching, a mix of fear, determination, and hope swirling in their depths. Keanu set his fork down, turning fully to face the boy as he stopped beside the booth. Ethan's small body trembled, his breath shallow, and he leaned in close, his voice so low Keanu had to tilt his head to hear. The note came first, a crumpled scrap of paper slid across the table. Keanu unfolded it, his fingers steady despite the sudden tightness in his chest. "He's not my dad. Please help her," it read, the words jagged and urgent. Then Ethan whispered, his voice a fragile thread. "He did something to my mom." Keanu froze, the weight of those words crashing over him like a wave. His calm shattered, replaced by a surge of instinct honed by years of reading people, of knowing when something was deeply wrong. He looked into Ethan's eyes and saw a cry for help he couldn't ignore, a flicker of fear Keanu, who'd faced his own storms, recognized all too well. This wasn't just a diner stop anymore. This was the start of something bigger, something that would test his courage and change lives forever. The air in Dottie's diner shifted the moment Ethan slipped Keanu that note. Keanu's fingers lingered on the crumpled paper. "He's not my dad. Please help her," as the boy's whispered words echoed in his mind. "He did something to my mom." Ethan stood there, small but sharp for his age, his green and blue friendship bracelet clutched tight to his chest like a talisman. His wide eyes darted nervously, searching Keanu's face for a lifeline. Keanu's breath caught, but he kept his voice steady, crouching down to Ethan's level. "Hey, it's okay," he murmured, his tone soft as a summer breeze. "You're safe with me. What else can you tell me?" Ethan hesitated, his free hand twisting the hem of his faded green shirt. Then, in a voice so low Keanu had to lean closer, he whispered, "He keeps a list in his jacket. I heard him say, 'Next stop.'" The words hit Keanu like a jolt, a puzzle piece snapping into place. A list? Next stop? This wasn't just a cry for help, it was a clue, and Ethan's mom, Laura, was in danger. Keanu's gaze flicked across the diner to the man Ethan had been sitting with, Victor. The guy was wiry, all sharp angles and restless energy, perched at his table like a hawk. He sipped his coffee with one hand, the other tapping the mug in a jittery rhythm that set Keanu's nerves on edge. Victor's cheap suit hung loose on his frame, and his eyes, dark and darting, kept snapping to Ethan, as if the boy were a loose thread he couldn't afford to let unravel. Keanu had seen enough people in his life to spot trouble, and Victor reeked of it. The man's phone sat beside his mug, screen glowing faintly, and Keanu caught him hiss, "Get to the silo, burn it if you have to," before Victor's attention shifted. He'd noticed Ethan was gone. Ellie sidled up to Keanu then, her voice a whisper. "He's lying. I've seen him here before with different kids." Keanu's gut tightened. Whatever this guy was into, it was bigger than he'd thought. And Ethan's bracelet was proof Laura was caught in the crosshairs. Victor stood, smoothing his jacket with a forced grin that didn't reach his eyes, and ambled over to Keanu's booth. "Ethan's got a wild imagination," he said, his voice oily and rehearsed. "Sorry if he's bothering you. He's a handful sometimes." The words were polite, but the undertone was a warning, a thin veneer over something coiled and tense. Keanu sensed Victor's unease, the way his fingers twitched, the way his gaze lingered just a beat too long. Years of reading people, of playing characters who lived on instinct, told Keanu this wasn't a concerned guardian. This was a man on edge, hiding something. He flashed a warm chuckle, leaning back in his seat to keep things light. "Kids tell the best stories, don't they?" he said, his tone easy, disarming. "No bother at all. He's got a spark." Victor's grin faltered for a split second, a crack in the mask, but he nodded, stepping back. "Yeah, sure. Just keep him out of trouble." Keanu's mind raced. He couldn't let Victor take Ethan. Not with that note. Not with Ellie's warning ringing in his ears. He glanced at the boy, who'd edged closer, clutching the bracelet tighter, as if it held all his courage. "She said don't trust him," Ethan whispered again, barely audible, then slipped something else into Keanu's hand. Victor's phone, snatched during the distraction. "There's a message from Mom on it," he added, eyes flicking to Victor's back. That sealed it. Keanu had to act, but he couldn't tip his hand, not yet. The diner was still humming, oblivious to the storm brewing in its quiet corner. Ellie bustled past with a tray of coffee mugs, and Keanu saw his opening. "Hey, Ellie," he called, his voice casual but loud enough to draw attention. "Could you refill my friend's coffee over there? On me. He looks like he could use it." He nodded toward Victor, who'd returned to his table, still watching. Ellie grinned. "You got it, hon," and headed over, giving Keanu the distraction he needed. "Stay close," Keanu murmured to Ethan, sliding out of the booth with the smoothness of a man who'd dodged paparazzi 1,000 times. He kept his pace steady, guiding Ethan toward the door as if they were just stepping out for air. The boy's small hand gripped his sleeve, the bracelet brushing Keanu's arm, a silent plea to keep going. Outside, the Oklahoma dusk had deepened, the sky a bruised purple over the fields. Keanu's motorcycle waited 15 feet away, parked under the diner's flickering neon sign. He moved fast now, lifting Ethan into the sidecar with a gentle, "Hang on tight, okay?" The boy nodded, curling up with the bracelet pressed to his chest, his trust in Keanu absolute. Keanu swung onto the bike, fishing his phone from his pocket, and Victor's from his jacket. His thumb hit 911 as he kicked the engine to life, the roar cutting through the stillness. "Yeah, this is an emergency," he said, voice low but firm, glancing back at the diner. "I've got a kid with me. Says his mom's in trouble. We're at Dottie's Diner off Route 66, heading toward the gas station 3 miles east. Send help quick." He didn't wait for a response, pocketing his phone as he peeled out of the lot, gravel crunching under the tires. "Not this time," he muttered, the memory of his sister flashing sharp. A promise he'd failed once, but not today. Ethan huddled low, the wind whipping his hair, and Keanu's heart raced. Not from the speed, but from the stakes. He'd promised to help, and he wasn't about to break that promise. Behind them, Victor's truck roared to life, headlights flaring in the side mirror like twin suns. Keanu's jaw tightened. He'd figured Victor wouldn't let them go easy, but the guy was faster than he'd expected. The truck's engine growled, closing the gap as Keanu pushed the bike harder, the needle climbing past 50 miles an hour on the empty stretch of Route 66. The fields blurred past, a golden haze in the twilight, and Keanu's mind sharpened to a single focus. Get Ethan safe, find Laura, figure out what Victor's list meant. The gas station loomed ahead, a faint glow 3 miles out, a beacon in the gathering dark. Victor's truck loomed closer, its horn blaring, a desperate bid to intimidate. But Keanu didn't flinch. He'd faced worse than this, and Ethan's quiet courage fueled him. "We're almost there," he called over the wind, his voice steady. "Hold on!" The chase was on. But Keanu kept it clean. No wild swerves, no reckless moves. This wasn't a movie stunt. It was real, and Ethan's life hung in the balance. Victor's headlights glared, but Keanu's resolve burned brighter. Whatever next stop meant, whatever Victor had done to Laura, Keanu was in it now, fully, irrevocably. The diner faded into the distance, but the mystery was just beginning to unfold. And Keanu knew one thing for sure. He wouldn't stop until Ethan and his mom were safe. The roar of Keanu's motorcycle cut through the Oklahoma night as he swerved into the gas station lot, tires skidding on loose gravel just 3 miles from Dottie's diner. Ethan clung to the sidecar, his small hands gripping the faded friendship bracelet, his breath quick and shallow from the chase. Victor's truck loomed behind them, its headlights blazing like a predator closing in. But Keanu kept his cool, scanning the lot for a way to buy time. The gas station glowed faintly under buzzing fluorescent lights, a lone oasis on Route 66, and fate, or maybe the spirit of the road, stepped in. A trucker named Bud, broad-shouldered and grizzled, was climbing into his rig, a 20-foot beast parked near the pumps. Keanu caught his eye, raising a hand in a silent plea, and Bud didn't hesitate. With a rumble, he swung his rig across the lot, barking into his CB radio. "Got a runner on 66. Block him if you can," rallying other truckers as he blocked Victor's path like a steel wall. The truck's horn blared as Victor slammed on his brakes, tires screeching, giving Keanu the precious seconds he needed. Keanu eased the bike to a stop behind the station, out of Victor's line of sight, and knelt beside Ethan. "You okay, buddy?" he asked, his voice steady despite the adrenaline pumping through him. Ethan nodded, his wide eyes locked on Keanu, trust unshaken. Then, with a trembling hand, he pulled Victor's phone from his pocket. Not just the list. "There's a message," he whispered, pressing play. Laura's voice crackled through. "If you find this, get Ethan out. Victor's not alone." Keanu's pulse quickened as he unfolded the list too. Names, dates, places, scrawled in Victor's jagged handwriting, with next stop, Silo, 7 miles, circled in red. A chill ran down his spine. A pickup trailed behind Victor's truck, a man in a cowboy hat at the wheel. Friend or foe? This wasn't just about Laura anymore. Victor was moving people, and Ethan's mom was caught in something dark. "Good job, Ethan," Keanu said, ruffling the boy's hair. "This is our map. Let's find her." Sirens wailed in the distance, closing in fast, and within minutes, 2 police cruisers rolled into the lot. Officers Carter and Diaz stepped out, their faces set with purpose. Carter, a tall man with a steady gaze, took point, while Diaz, wiry and quick, scanned the scene. Keanu waved them over, handing Carter the list and phone. "This kid's mom's in trouble, 7 miles from here in Old Grain Silo. That guy." He nodded toward Victor, now pacing beside his stalled truck. "He's behind it. We need to move." Carter played the message, his jaw tightening, and radioed for backup. "Stay with the boy," he said, but Keanu shook his head. I'm coming. He trusts me. Ethan's small hand slipped into his, the bracelet brushing his wrist, and Carter relented with a nod. Let's roll. The 7-mile drive felt like an eternity, the cruisers cutting through the night with Keanu's bike trailing close. Ethan stayed quiet, his eyes fixed ahead, as if he could sense Laura waiting. The silo loomed into view, a rusted giant against the starry sky, 50 feet tall and silent, its shadow stretching across the empty field. The officers parked 100 yards out, lights off, and approached on foot, Keanu and Ethan behind them. Carter signaled for quiet, his hand on his holster, while Diaz flanked the entrance. Keanu's boots crunched softly on the dirt, his heart pounding, not from fear, but from the weight of what they might find. He squeezed Ethan's shoulder. "We're here for her," he whispered, and the boy nodded, brave beyond his years. Inside, the silo was a cavern of dust and shadow, the air thick with the scent of old grain. A faint rustle drew them deeper, past stacks of crates, until Carter's flashlight caught a figure, Laura, Ethan's mom, tied to a chair in the corner. Her wrists were bound with rope, her face pale but alert, eyes blazing with a defiance that cut through her exhaustion. "Ethan," she rasped, her voice hoarse but firm. "I knew you'd find help." Keanu's chest tightened at her strength, but there was no time to linger. Beside her sat a locked metal box, and as Diaz moved to cut her free, a shadow lunged from behind the crates. Nate, Victor's partner, a hulking figure with wild eyes. He bolted for the exit, a desperate bid to escape. Keanu reacted on instinct. "Stay back!" he hissed to Ethan, stepping forward as Nate charged past. With a swift move, Keanu's boot caught Nate's ankle, sending him sprawling into the dust with a muffled thud. Nate scrambled, but Keanu dropped a knee to his back, pinning him just long enough for Diaz to swoop in with handcuffs. "Got him," Diaz grunted, clicking the cuffs tight. No blood, no fists. Just a clean takedown, quick and controlled. Carter hauled Nate up, while Keanu turned to Laura, helping Diaz untie her ropes. "You're safe now," he said, his voice warm but firm. Laura nodded, her gaze locking on Ethan as he rushed to her side, burying his face in her arms. The bracelet gleamed as their hands met, a quiet triumph in the chaos. Victor stormed in moments later, shoving past the crates, his fake grin gone, replaced by a snarl. "You've got nothing on me," he barked. But Carter held up the list, then kicked open the locked box. Dozens of IDs spilled out, evidence Victor was smuggling people across state lines. "This says otherwise," Carter said, voice like steel. Victor smirked. "Check the list closer. This isn't over," his eyes glinting with menace as Diaz cuffed him. He spat curses as they dragged him and Nate to the cruisers, but Keanu stayed with Laura and Ethan, his focus unwavering. The rescue wasn't just his doing. The pickup rolled in, revealing an undercover cop who'd tipped Carter off. While back at the gas station, Bud's rig and CB call had rallied truckers, and Ellie's tip from the diner had alerted the police. Quiet heroes from Dottie's who'd turned the tide. As the dust settled, Keanu crouched beside Ethan and Laura, the silo's gloom fading with the sound of approaching sirens. "You held on tight," he told Ethan, tapping the bracelet. "That's what got us here." Laura's voice broke through, steady despite the strain. "Thank you for believing him." Keanu smiled, the kind that lit up his eyes. He made it easy. The climax had arrived, not with fists or fury, but with courage. Ethan's, Laura's, and a community's, woven together by a man who'd stopped for pie and found a purpose. The grain silo's dusty air seemed to lift as the tension broke, replaced by a quiet hum of relief. Laura, still seated in the chair where she'd been bound, worked her wrists free from the loosened ropes with a steady determination, her fingers trembling but resolute. Ethan didn't wait a second longer. He broke from Keanu's side, his small feet kicking up puffs of dirt as he rushed to her, the faded friendship bracelet clutched in his hand. "Mom!" he cried, his voice a mix of fear and joy, and flung himself into her arms. Laura caught him, pulling him close, her breath hitching. "I told him to leave me. I thought Victor would let him go if I stayed," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I couldn't," Ethan interrupted, tears falling. "I promised I'd get you back," as he slipped the bracelet onto her wrist where it belonged. The green and blue threads gleamed faintly in the flashlight's glow, a symbol of their unbreakable bond. "You're my brave boy," she said, her voice soft but steady, a mother's strength shining through the strain. Her fingers traced the bracelet, her eyes brimming with relief as she held Ethan tight, their silhouettes a quiet victory against the silo's shadows. Keanu stepped back, his boots scuffing the dirt floor, giving them space to breathe in their moment. He watched with a faint smile, the kind that crinkled the corners of his eyes, as Laura brushed Ethan's messy hair from his forehead, her touch gentle but fierce. "You both kept that promise," he said softly, his voice thick with the weight of their reunion. The dusty air cleared with hope, the weight of the chase and the rescue settling into something lighter, something warm. Outside, the night stretched over the Oklahoma plains, the stars peeking through the silo's rusted gaps, and for a moment, it was just the two of them, mother and son, reunited. Keanu's chest swelled with a quiet pride, not for himself, but for Ethan, whose courage had carried them here. He'd seen a lot in his years, loss, struggle, redemption. But this was why he kept going, why he stopped at places like Dottie's Diner instead of speeding by. Beyond the silo's walls, justice was closing in. Officers Carter and Diaz stood over Victor and Nate, their cuffs glinting as the patrol car's red and blue lights pulsed against the night. Carter held up the scribbled list Keanu had handed over, its jagged lines encircled "Next Stop, Silo," now a damning thread. Diaz knelt by the locked box they'd found beside Laura, prying it open with a quick twist. IDs spilled out, dog-eared driver's licenses, faded passports, names and faces of people Victor had been moving across state lines. "Small-time smuggling operation," Carter muttered, flipping through the papers, his voice clipped with disgust. "Looks like he's been at it for months." The evidence was ironclad, linking Victor to a web of quiet crime that stretched beyond Laura and Ethan, a shadow cast over the open road. Victor sat in the back of the cruiser, his wiry frame hunched, his hands cuffed behind him. The fake grin he'd worn at the diner was gone, replaced by a glare that burned through the window. "This isn't over," he muttered, his voice low and venomous, his breath fogging the glass. "You've got no idea what you've started." But his threats fell flat, hollow against the steady hum of the engine as Carter slammed the door shut. Victor's control unraveled with every name on that list laid bare. The patrol car pulled away, gravel crunching under its tires, taking Victor and Nate 4 miles back to the station where justice would take its course. Keanu watched it go, his arms crossed, unfazed. He'd heard bluster before. Victor's words were noise, nothing more. The real story was here, in the silo with the family he'd helped save. Ethan's small voice broke the silence, pulling Keanu's attention back. The boy stood beside Laura, still holding her hand, the bracelet now a quiet anchor between them. "Can we keep it safe now?" he asked, his eyes lifting to Keanu, wide and searching. The "it" wasn't just the bracelet, it was everything. His mom, their home, the fragile peace they'd reclaimed. Keanu crouched down, meeting Ethan's gaze at his level, his voice warm and sure. "Yeah, buddy, I'll stick around until you're both okay." It wasn't a throwaway promise. It was Keanu, the man who'd stopped for pie and found a purpose, committing to see this through. Laura looked up, her face pale but her eyes steady, and nodded, a silent thank you that carried more weight than words. The reunion deepened as Laura pulled Ethan closer, her fingers lingering on the bracelet's threads. "I didn't think he'd find someone like you," she said, her voice cracking with relief. Keanu shrugged, his humility as natural as the Oklahoma breeze. "He found me because he's brave. That's all it took." Ethan nestled against her, his trembling easing, and for the first time that night, a faint smile tugged at his lips. The silo's gloom faded, replaced by the soft glow of flashlight beams and the distant wail of an ambulance Carter had called in. Paramedics would be here soon. 7 miles wasn't far, and Laura's scrapes, minor but real, would get the care they needed. But for now, it was enough to stand together, the dust settling around them like a curtain falling on a hard-won act. Victor's fate was sealed as the cruiser vanished into the night, his operation crumbling under the weight of that box of IDs. Carter and Diaz exchanged a glance, satisfied but weary, knowing their work was just beginning, tracking down the names, unraveling the rest of Victor's scheme. But for Keanu, the focus stayed small, human. He didn't need to chase the big picture. He'd done his part, and it was right here. Ethan's hand in Laura's, the bracelet back where it belonged. The locals had played their roles too. Ellie's tip from the diner, Bud's rig and CB call blocking the way. And their quiet heroism lingered in the air, a testament to the heart of this stretch of Route 66. Keanu stepped outside, the cool night washing over him as he leaned against his motorcycle, parked 15 feet from the silo. Ethan and Laura followed, hand in hand, the boys' steps steadier now. "You're sticking around?" Laura asked, her voice soft but curious. Keanu nodded, his smile easy. "Long enough to make sure you're set. Maybe grab another slice of pie after." She laughed, a small, tired sound, but real, and Ethan piped up, "Can I come too?" Keanu grinned. "Deal." The falling action settled like dusk over the plains. Justice served. A family whole and a promise kept. Proof that even in the chaos, hope could find a way. The dawn broke gently over Oklahoma, a soft golden light spilling through the windows of a small clinic 4 miles from the grain silo where the night's chaos had unfolded. Laura lay in a bed, her minor scrapes cleaned and bandaged, the exhaustion in her face softening under the care of the staff. An IV dripped quietly beside her, but her eyes, steady and warm, stayed fixed on Ethan, who sat cross-legged on a chair at her side. The friendship bracelet, its green and blue threads catching the morning sun, rested on her wrist again, a gleaming symbol of their bond reclaimed. Ethan's small hand hovered near hers, tracing the air above it, as if afraid to break the moment. He'd been through a storm, but here, in the quiet of the clinic room, he was safe, and so was she. Keanu stood nearby, leaning against the wall with his arms crossed, his gray hoodie still dusted with silo dirt. He watched them with a faint smile, ever humble, his presence a steady anchor. Laura turned to him, her voice soft but firm despite the strain. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her eyes shimmering with gratitude. "You saved us." Keanu shook his head, stepping closer, his boots scuffing the linoleum floor. "I was just in the right place," he replied, his tone warm and unassuming. "Ethan's the real star here. He never gave up." He nodded toward the boy, who looked up with a shy grin, the bracelet's light dancing in his eyes. "He's the one who got us moving, who held on when it mattered." Laura squeezed Ethan's hand, her smile breaking through the fatigue. "He's always been my fighter," she said, and Ethan nestled closer, the weight of the night lifting with every breath they shared. That moment in the clinic wasn't the end. It was a beginning. Keanu, moved by Ethan's courage and Laura's resilience, felt a spark ignite, a chance to right an old wrong from his past. He'd seen too many stories of families torn apart, too many kids left waiting for help that never came. This time, he could do more. Over the next few days, As Laura healed and Ethan found his footing, Keanu quietly set wheels in motion. He launched Ethan's Bracelet, a fund to help lost families reunite, using the story of that green and blue thread to rally support. A family arrived at the clinic that week, a little girl hugging her mom, whispering, "I got her back because of you two," as Ethan beamed. It wasn't about Keanu. It was about giving others the chance Ethan had fought for, a lifeline for those stranded on their own, Route 66. Donations poured in as word spread of the boy who'd whispered for help and the man who'd answered, a beacon of hope stitched into every dollar raised. Months later, Dottie's diner buzzed with a new energy. The red vinyl booths were packed, the jukebox humming Johnny Cash instead of Patsy Cline, and the air thick with the scent of cherry pie. It was Hero Day, a celebration the town had thrown together to honor Ethan. A banner stretched across the counter, crudely painted but heartfelt, read Ethan's big win, and locals milled about, swapping versions of the story Bud had been telling since that wild night. Ethan, now a little taller, a little surer, stood near the counter with Laura, the bracelet still on her wrist like a badge of survival. Keanu rolled in on his motorcycle, unveiling a bracelet-shaped sign. "Ethan, stop!" as the engine's growl faded. His arrival met with cheers. He waved off with a grin. Laura stepped forward, voice clear. "Ethan's my hero, and Keanu's ours," as locals handed Ethan a handmade bracelet. "You're one of us now." Ethan broke from the crowd, clutching a crayon sketch he'd spent days perfecting. He handed it to Keanu, two stick figures by a motorcycle, one small, one tall, with "Thanks, Keanu" scrawled in wobbly red letters. Keanu took it, his smile widening as he crouched to Ethan's level. "This is awesome, kid," he said, holding the drawing like a treasure. "You know, courage starts with asking. You taught me that." Ethan beamed, his shy edges melting away, and Laura laughed, a sound that carried the lightness of a fresh start. The diner erupted in applause, Ellie sliding a pie slice to Keanu's old booth with a wink. "For our road warrior," she called, and Bud raising his coffee mug in a toast from the counter. The lessons of that night lingered, rich and deep. For Keanu, it was a reminder that heroism isn't always loud. It's in the quiet choice to stop, to listen, to act. Ethan showed that bravery isn't about size or strength, but about trusting your voice, even when it shakes. Laura's resilience proved that hope can hold firm, even when the ropes bind tight. And the folks at Dottie's, Ellie with her tip, Bud with his rig, taught that communities can be the backbone of justice, stitching together safety with small, steady hands. It's a story of everyday people rising up, of a road that led not just to rescue, but to renewal. As the celebration wound down, the diner hummed again, its rhythm unbroken. Ellie served pie to new customers, her polka-dot apron swaying as she moved, while Bud spun the tale for a wide-eyed trucker passing through, his hands waving over his mug. Keanu stepped outside, the Oklahoma sun dipping low, painting the fields amber once more. Ethan and Laura followed, standing by the door as he swung onto his bike. "You're leaving?" Ethan asked, a hint of worry in his voice. Keanu grinned, adjusting his sunglasses. "Just for now. Roads keep calling, but I'll be back." Ethan waved, the bracelet catching the sun as Keanu's engine roared to life, a sound that echoed promise across the plains. To you watching this, thank you. Thank you for riding along with us, for rooting for Ethan, Laura, and Keanu through every mile. Your support keeps these stories alive, keeps us digging for tales that warm the heart and lift the spirit. There's a lesson here for all of us. Courage starts with a whisper, hope grows with a hand outstretched, and together we can change the road ahead. If this moved you, drop a like, share it with someone who needs it, and stick around. We've got more coming tomorrow. We'll bring you another story of grit and grace, right here on this channel. Until then, keep asking, keep listening, and keep the faith. Keanu rode off into the sunset, the open road bright and endless, A hero, not because he had to be, but because he chose to be.